Goeiemorgen allemaal. Good morning, everybody. I hope that everybody can hear me. It's 8 o'clock and I think we should get the show on the road. As julle hoor, dis 'n generatortjie wat hardloop hier agter. In Pretoria het ons alweer nie krag nie, veral nie in my area nie. En dan is natuurlik die haridas en die vinke wat beklei die agtergrond. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. We started this off about 3 weeks before we went into close down due to COVID. And that was our first interactive session that we had between Aurik, Efficient Wealth, and Ontbytsake. And this morning, a hearty welcome again to Dawie Roodt and to Pavlo Phitidis from Aurik, our two guest speakers. And I think it's a great time. I think we actually went through some tough times, especially on the SME market side, and to reignite and to rebuild your business. That is what we're looking forward to in 2021. And better to partner with you and your business than a person like Dawie Roodt and Pavlo Phitidis. They've got excellent teams, professionals standing by to actually assist you. But with no further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we'll have some time at the end of the session to pop some questions. If you've got a burning platform question, please go to the chat box and raise it there. Then we can pick it up as we go along. Otherwise, at the end of the show, we'll have a couple of minutes that you can actually address your questions to either Dawie or to Pavlo. But to take it away, Dawie, baie welkom. Dankie dat jy vanoggend weer by ons aangesluit het. Dis 'n rowwe week. It's amazing what we're busy doing out there in the markets. But welcome and over to you.
Goeiemôre Willem, laat ek net die tegniese goeders uitsoek. Ek net my skerm ook deel, Willem, net so oomblikie.
That is right. I think it's a technical thing. Sorry, Papa, I didn't mention that. Just make sure, ladies and gentlemen, that your sound is off. And if we do have problems with the streaming, then we'll ask you to switch off your cameras. But the protocol is if you want to, stay online, watch the camera. But if we're struggling with the streaming, just switch off the cameras. But Papa will advise on that. But otherwise, just see that your sound is off. That's the most important thing. Dankie julle.
Willem, ek wil net seker maak, kan jy my presentation sien?
Hy lyk baie mooi, ons is nou daar op local content. Dit lyk baie mooi. Thank you, Dawie.
Okay. Baie dankie Willem. Thank you very much for everybody. Good morning to everybody. Good morning to you also, Pablo. Very nice sharing this platform with you. So my job is to, within a couple of minutes, just to give a bit of a context. The more important speaker, of course, will be Pablo. He will and he will give you some assistance on how you can manage your business during these very difficult times. So my job is to basically give a bit of a background, of a bit of a context on what is going on in the South African economy, but also what is going on in the world economy. Well, first of all, I think we all know by now is that the South African economy is in a very deep recession. The South African economy was already in a recession before the lockdown, and now with the lockdown and everything that goes with that, the recession is extended. Deep recession, in fact, I think one can rightfully call this a very deep depression. The South African economy is in very deep trouble. Also very importantly, and it's important that we understand this, is that when I listen to politics, I hear quite often that it is the virus doing this and it is the coronavirus doing that. That, of course, is nonsense. The reason why the South African economy is in trouble and the reason why the economy is in very deep trouble is not the virus, it is the lockdown. And it's important to understand that it's not the virus, it is the lockdown. I have calculated that we will have a dramatic increase in poverty in South Africa because of the lockdown. And I have calculated that we're probably going to lose over the next 10 years approximately 300,000 lives. That's it, 300,000 lives because of the increase in poverty. Poverty is by far the biggest killer out there, and the poverty is going to kill far more people, more than 10 times more people than what the virus is going to kill. Of course, every death is one death too many. And of course, we have to be careful, especially with people vulnerable. But the reality is that a massive increase in poverty will lead.
Yeah, all the other information that I can try my best to send it out to you.
Can I?
Sorry guys, can you just switch off your mics, please? There's a lot of background news. Please switch it off. I know that the breakfast that the wife is serving is nice and the baby giving fed is also essential, but please switch off your sound. Dankie, Dawie, sorry.
Okay, so we've established without a doubt that the lockdown is causing all this damage, and I think that the lockdown was far too strict in South Africa. Of course, we have to put measures in place to protect people that are vulnerable to this virus. It is a very dangerous virus, but the way that we managed this and the lockdown was far too severe, and the price that we're going to pay because of the collapsing economy is far too great. Then something else that we also have to be aware of is that we have a government in South Africa that is very, very corrupt, very, very destructive, and it's probably the most destructive force that the South African economy has ever witnessed. And we can see it in all sort of levels. And I was just absolutely horrified to see the extent of the corruption that happened during this lockdown. I'm referring to this private protective gears, for example, and everything that came with that. It is absolutely horrible the way that the South African government, the levels of corruption and incompetence with that as well. And of course, there's a lot of infighting in government. Some good news, it seems as if the president is winning. We know that Aurik Magashule there's a warrant for his arrest. Hopefully that will come to the obvious conclusion. And in the process, certainly Cyril Ramaphosa is winning. Unfortunately, also, Cyril Ramaphosa is rather, in ideological terms, rather left. And with him is certainly Pravin Gordhan. And we know Pravin Gordhan is the minister that was in charge of the fiscal accounts, mostly when the fiscal accounts collapsed. Today, he's, of course, the minister responsible for the state-owned enterprises. And he's the guy putting all the pressure on Tito Mboweni to bail out institutions like, for example, the South African Airways. So anyway, Cyril Ramaphosa certainly is winning, but Cyril Ramaphosa himself and his economic plans, I'm afraid, is not what we need. We need something completely different in terms of how we can fix the South African economy. There's a lot of political confusion, ideological confusion in government as well. I'm referring to the infighting, like, for example, Cyril Ramaphosa basically fighting with Tito Mboweni, basically fighting with the ex-Zuma crowd. I'm referring to Aurik Magashule and his crowd primarily. So, and they all stand for different things. Tito Mboweni, for example, is far more free market orientated. He's been saying that. And Tito Mboweni, and use his own words, he had to step down because the pressure on things like, for example, bailing out the South African Airways was simply far too great. So ideologically, there's a lot of infighting as well. It's not only a leadership battle, there's an ideological battle as well. And Tito Mboweni is losing this battle. I've got a suspicion Tito Mboweni is not going to be around for that much longer. We have another major battle that is looming, and that battle is basically within the tripartite alliance, and that the battle lines have been drawn between whoever's in charge of the ANC and COSATU particularly. What we need to do, we have to cut back on the wage bill, and quite dramatically, and COSATU is not going to accept that lying down. So I've got a suspicion, and we've already seen examples of that the last couple of days and weeks, that COSATU will really make life extremely difficult for the state and for Tito Mboweni if he really wants to cut back on the state wage bill, which needs to happen. And then, of course, the recovery plan of the president. I'm afraid the recovery plan centers primarily around capital investment in the economy. I think what we should have done rather is to get those things that the state is supposed to be doing, like, for example, the local authorities, get that to work before we start with grand plans, like, for example, huge investment projects. Because if you spend a lot of money on investment projects, on infrastructural development, but the local authorities are dysfunctional, then I'm afraid much of that money will be lost. Additionally, there's also an emphasis on job creation. And again, I disagree with that, because clearly politicians think that if you keep people busy, that you've created jobs. That indeed is not the case. The president is planning to employ in inverted commas, 800,000 people before the end of March 2021. He's probably going to be successful in that, but those people that will be employed will not necessarily be that productive. Now, this graph clearly shows what's been happening on a per capita basis in South Africa for the past 5 years. on an average basis, we have been getting poorer in South Africa. Every year, we have been getting poorer. And this year, there will be a complete and a total collapse in per capita GDP. This is on an average basis. So on a per capita basis, of course, many people lost their jobs. Many people lost all their income. Many people did not lose their income. And some businesses actually did very, very well. And I think Pavlo will touch on that as well. But the reality is that we are in very deep trouble. This graph clearly shows that on a per capita basis, on average, the average South African is significantly worse off this year than last year. And last year was worse than the year before. So that is on a per capita basis. This is affecting all of us. Of course, it's not only the individuals that will be affected. The Minister of Finance will be affected as well. This is just a comparison. This is the minister's own graph. This is just a comparison between the original budgeted estimates for revenue for the Minister of Finance compared to his actual revenue. So he will budget in February and say, listen, I'm going to collect X amount of taxes, but his actual collections are significantly below his original budgeted estimates. And this is the difference. So the past couple of years, every year, his collections were less than originally budgeted for. The most recent number is for an under collection of more than 300 to about 310 billion. And my estimate is for an under collection of about 320, 330 billion below the original budgeted estimates. So the state's revenue tax collections are under tremendous pressure during the current financial year as well. And even the minister's adjusted numbers are probably too optimistic. But that means that we're probably going to see tax increases next year. So where can we expect these sort of tax increases? The tax increases, there could be a so-called solidarity tax. It can take the form of a wealth tax, which I doubt, because a wealth tax is very difficult to implement. A wealth tax, a couple of countries have tried wealth taxes, and most countries in the world, they've abolished their wealth taxes. And anyway, it takes a long time to establish or to implement a wealth tax. So I don't think the solidarity tax will take the form of a wealth tax, but I do believe it could take the form of an increase, a temporary increase in personal income taxes. Now I can guarantee you there's nothing as permanent as a temporary tax increase. So we're probably going to see an increase in personal income taxes next year in the budget of the Minister of Finance. Those percentages that I show there is according to the budget of the Minister of Finance. Remember, in his medium-term budget speech, he actually gives us estimates of what he expects in terms of revenue collection in the next financial year as well. Now, those are the kind of increases that he's expecting in total tax collections for those various taxes. So expect an increase in personal income taxes. I will not be surprised if there are certain adjustments on capital gains tax. Capital gains tax, of course, is an immoral tax, because capital gains tax is a large chunk of that is actually a tax that you pay on inflation. There could be some changes on estate duties and so on. And those are all capital taxes, by the way. Fuel levy will be increased, I'm pretty sure about that. Sin taxes will be increased as well. That is on alcohol and tobacco. What we have seen during the lockdown is that all the smokers and all the drinkers that I know of could still drink and smoke because they simply bought their fix in the black market. And if you increase those taxes, people will simply go back to the black market. The lockdown was an amazing time for these illegal businesses, because that created an opportunity for them to really establish their businesses. So expect the number of tax increases. It's not going to make much of a difference to the fiscal accounts, simply because we are overtaxed as things stand already. This is state spending, and this is the big problem. State spending as a percentage of GDP, they just keep on spending like there is no tomorrow. We have to cut back on state spending, and the only alternative is that you have to spend less on people. And that is why Kusatu is getting angry. So if we cut back on the wage bill, Kusatu is going to trash the streets, we know that. And we also have to cut back on the state-owned enterprises, yet we keep on spending money on South African Airways and so on, as an example. We need to turn this around. There's an article issued by the South African Reserve Bank yesterday warning us that we're heading for some serious trouble if we do not cut state spending dramatically. This is the fiscal deficit. The fiscal deficit is simply the difference between how much they spent, the previous graph, and what they get in.
And the fiscal deficit this year is likely to be around about 18%, 17-18% of GDP, the highest in the history of South Africa, and it's simply an indication of the total unsustainability of the fiscal accounts. So we are in big trouble as far as the fiscal accounts are concerned. Now, related to this, remember, South Africa saves, or South Africans save approximately 15% of GDP, between 15 and 20%, but currently around about 15, maybe 16%. The fiscal deficit is going to be approximately 17-18% of GDP. So the state will borrow all the existing domestic savings and more. So that is the reason why our bond yields are relatively high, because capital market interest rates are going up because the state is borrowing too much money. Now, if we want to invest in South Africa, the private sector simply cannot invest because there isn't savings available, making us very dependent on foreign capital inflows in order to fund local savings. So that's another reason why the state needs to cut back on state spending. So they need to borrow less, allowing the private sector to take some of those savings to invest, which is not the case in the current financial year. And I can tell you, in the next financial year and the years thereafter, then the numbers may move in the right direction, but it will be more or less in the same kind of magnitude. So we are in a fiscal debt trap. Fiscal debt trap simply means that state debt levels are at record high levels and going up like there is no tomorrow. You have to add the debt of the state-owned enterprises to this as well. And that means you can add another 15% of GDP to existing debt to GDP ratio. That is also pushing up interest rates, especially long-term interest rates. The Reserve Bank can cut short-term interest rates, and the Reserve Bank can try by buying government bond instruments to push down the longer end of the yield curve as well. But they can do so much and not more. And we know that South African bond yields are quite high at the moment. This could eventually lead to prescribed assets, and I know the politicians are saying this is not on the cards. I can tell you, if you keep on doing what we are doing currently, they will have no choice but to start looking at the Unemployment Insurance Fund, by the way, which they are looking at, eventually looking at the PIC to get some money, and eventually looking at the private sector pension funds as well to fund this huge deficit. So it's not prescribed assets. We do not have that yet, but it is something that eventually will, I believe, become a reality unless we cut state spending and quite dramatically. Currently, we nearly 5% relative to GDP is the amount of money that we spend in interest on state debt. This is state debt. State debt is likely to exceed 100% of GDP within 3-4 years' time. And we know that last week we got another downgrade. And this is the reason for that. The rating agencies basically told us your debt levels are too high and it is going up too fast. That's the one message. The second message of the rating agencies is we simply do not believe that the Minister of Finance will achieve his targets. Don't think it's just a one-way bet all the time. Remember, our bond yields are very attractive. Our rand is a very weak currency and our financial markets are very liquid. So it's very much possible, and that's in fact what we're seeing currently, that in the short term, we can see capital inflows because it's a cheap entrance via the currency for foreigners, very attractive bond yields, and also a very liquid market, which means they can get out if they want to very quickly. So in the short term, it's quite possible for the rand to appreciate and quite strongly as well. And this should be seen as an opportunity where you can diversify your assets internationally as well. Now, okay, so where are we? Now, we've seen these sort of things before, many countries in the world. First of all, you run out of taxpayers. We've run out of taxpayers pretty much. They're going to try to increase taxes. It's not going to make much of a difference. Then you run out of capital. We've run out of capital. So a destructive force like the South African government will start consuming capital. They've done that. Eskom is an excellent example. South African Airways, and the list goes on. And then what will happen is they need to get money from somewhere, and they start looking for the only pot of gold that is left, and that's the savings industry, like pension funds as an example. So that's the next step that I believe is probably going to happen unless we turn the fiscal accounts around. It doesn't look too good at the moment. Then people are going to start running away. And then you close the doors. It's called foreign exchange regulations. That I believe is something that could happen as well. And then the only thing that is left is for inflation to get out of hand. Now, inflation, of course, is one of those things where basically what happens with inflation is that it erodes the value of money. But not only does it erode the value of money, it also erodes the value of debt. And I believe that eventually, and we're probably talking about 2-3 years or so, South Africa will start experiencing some issues as far as inflation is concerned. In the meantime, the South African Reserve Bank is very much independent, which is a very good thing. That's a good thing. The press is very much independent, and the judiciary in South Africa is still independent, although not very efficient. Yeah, so without a doubt, we find ourselves in a very, very difficult spot where we are at the moment. And I think it's important for individuals to be aware of this and to position yourself in such a manner that you can, well, get through this in a way with as little damage as possible. And I guess that is exactly what Pavlo is going to tell you, how to get out of this with as little damage as possible. Dankie Willem. Willem, Pavlo, are you there?
Sorry, guys. Yeah.
I am. I think.
There are you.
More coffee. You need more coffee, Willem.
I'm having generated.
Bakker wees, omdat ons gaan 'n bietjie werk vanmôre, né? After that depressing news, I'm ready to slip my wrists. Yeah, I can see Etienne nodding and I can see Charles nodding. Can everyone put their cameras on? I want to see human people. I've been talking to audiences in the United States, in EU, in the UK, in Singapore, and it's just, it's so nice to see South Africans and just see real people that look familiar.
Hello, Pavlo. Very nice, very nice seeing you as well.
Oh,
so it's your job to get people to smile again. It was my job to wake them up, not your job.
Listen, Dawie, I don't know, I'm going to slip my wrists, and I would, but for one thing, firstly, can everyone see the screen that I'm sharing? Yes?
Yes.
Good. Okay, before I start, our government is a disaster, and it has been for a long time. Poverty's risen globally. There are 6 million kids in the United Kingdom that struggle to get a meal a day. And the government decision to remove school lunches put those kids into life jeopardy. The virus, it's hit everybody everywhere. And we have been very lucky that when it came to only give us one winter. The Northern Hemisphere's had 2 winters. There are 3, what are these things called? The injections. There are 3 antidotes coming, vaccines coming. We have invested through one of our asset managers into the Oxford research. That vaccine's coming. We've already acquired 10% of the first run of the vaccines. That's 30 million vaccines that will be coming into South Africa in the first half of next year. Corruption. Corruption. You must see what took place in the United States. You must see what I've witnessed and witnessing in the United Kingdom. A track and trace piece of technology that in South Africa would cost around 300 million rand to build has cost over 12 billion pounds, and nobody understands where that money has gone. A government with no economic vision. Well, let's look at the United Kingdom. Let's look at the sideways moving economy of the whole of Europe. Guys, every country has its problems, and the grass isn't necessarily greener here, there, or anywhere else. I got an extensive document from Australian government at the beginning of last week, 119 pages on the state of the Australian SME economy. Globally, 94.6% of businesses started, fail to sell. I'm not talking about startup businesses. I'm talking about businesses 20, 30, 40 years of establishment. Willem, businesses that would have given you good income and a good living. And when it comes to the final moments, they fail to sell. In Australia, that number is 97.2%. They have a real crisis of investment in the SME economy across Australia. Things are not that bad. It feels bad because we're getting so much of it thrown at us. This year, the businesses we work with, typically doing between 10, 12 million up to 250, 300 million, will close off their February books at an average growth rate of around 25% from last year. It's down from the year before by about 4%. Next year, those businesses we are working with will have a record growth year. And there are a couple of reasons for it. The first reason is they've got the right mindset. They've decided that they have everything to lose. They've decided that they cannot get a job in corporate. They've decided that there are no jobs in corporate or government. They've decided that out of necessity, they have to grow. Because Dawie's right. We have a government that does not know how to look after its people. And that means we need to look after ourselves. The second reason, with respect, they have a good method. And they've had a method, a structured method to grow. A third reason, in a zero growth economy, in a regressive economy, the bigger the business is, the more pain it takes. In the last 5 years, in the corporate work that I've done, on 46 corporates, massive corporates, funded actively through the JSE, at the beginning of every year, they set strategy. They set strategy for the new reality of a no-growth economy. The strategy gets set by big fancy consultants with big fancy documents and big fancy boards with big fancy CEOs and C-suite executives. And it takes a year for the strategy to reach the ground. And at the end of that year, what do? They set strategy again. So there's no traction. The SME economy is servicing their needs in the meantime. And yes, it's delayed, but we've seen massive growth for SMEs there. Another element is the business model. Over the last 3 years, we have seen more and more and more of our clients turn around and say, the Rand is in our favor. The low cost base of the Rand and the quality of services you can enjoy here compared to what I've witnessed in the United States, in Europe, and in the UK should not be taken for granted. Every business today needs to increase its level of digitization, and technology costs money. If I look at our business, Aurik, the underlying platform that we have built, the technical platform that gives us access to SMEs right across the world in a digitized manner, has cost about 1/17 of what it would have cost in the United Kingdom or the United States for the same level of quality and work. There are many things in our favor. And the view that we should all have is that this remains a country where, given your establishment, given your networks, given your cultural understanding of the country, given the challenges that are familiar to you here, if you're in business and you have the drive, the opportunity to grow close to 50% in the next financial year after February next year is high. Your competitors that you had pre-COVID will be reduced by 20 to 30%. The ability for government to deliver services will be reduced by a further 10, 15%. And corporates are desperate for services as they themselves try and offload cost and begin outsourcing more and more and more. If we build businesses that are able and capable, on those reasons alone, we'll make up the revenues next year that we've lost this year. Sorry, I needed to set the scene. Because Etienne, who's in control of you in your life and rudder pumps? Is it the Australian government? Is it Xi Jinping? Or is it you? And that's what we need to remember. Through the way that we think and through the way that we behave, we have far more control than you anticipate. I want to get into this because there's a lot to cover. Okay, I'm going to start off. Pippa, can you run a poll for me? I want to know from everyone, please, 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 please play along and engage and interact and tell me I'm talking rubbish on the chat. And introduce yourselves to each other while I'm talking. We all are used to multitasking. Am I right, Gerard? We can all multitask today, exactly. So let's get some energy going. Let's get some activity going. Let's run a poll. What do you think you want to achieve in the next 36 to 60 months? The poll is running. The poll is running. Wow. Build, grow, and dominate in your sector. I love that. I love that. We have got keepers. We have got stayers because we will build this economy out, irrespectively of how shockingly it is run by government. Build, grow, and exit to live lekker by die see. Yeah, I can see Etienne nodding. Is that you, Etienne? Did you vote that? You look too young to do that, my friend. Build, grow, and sell to live in America, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, England. I deliberately put A and C there to upset everybody. But A, Australia, N, New Zealand. You can change your vote if you want. Get out of my business and get a job and a steady paycheck.
No.
No, 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 no. That will doesn't exist. That will doesn't exist. Trust me, we're all unemployable. Firstly, there are very few jobs out there. And for other reasons, we are mostly unemployable. Who would want to employ an entrepreneur, a business owner? Imagine me getting Dani to do what I tell him to do. I think he'll just reach out and give me a big clap. There's no way. There's no way. And other, well, one person's on other. So if we look at it, if we stop and share the results, Pippa, 87% want to build, grow, and dominate in the sector that you're trading in. I'm going to give you a formula for all 4 of these options. So thank you very much for that poll. That was really interesting. So let's just talk about the only destination any of us should be following. The only destination. Willem, I promise you, as much as you love what you do, there's still only 2 outcomes for all of us here as business owners. It's either going to be a sale, a successful sale, or it's going to be a closure. 94.6% of businesses started failed to sell. I'll share the reasons for it a little bit later on. But guys, surely, with everything we invest in our businesses, to keep them going, to keep them moving, and whilst we might be living well out of our businesses today, that exit is absolutely critical in terms of it contributing to your wealth as a family, as an individual, and as a legacy. If you look at what an asset is, because from an Aurik point of view, we say every business should be built into an asset of value. And Dawie, either you or any one of your colleagues from the Efficient Group can challenge me on this. I'm going to give a definition of an investable asset. If you put $100 on the stock exchange and you buy a share, and you hold the share for 3 years, 5 years, hopefully at the end of 3 years, 5 years, you can sell it for 300 Rand, let's say. The difference between the 100 Rand you paid, the 300 Rand, the 200 Rand profit is a capital profit. We as business owners get that only when we sell our businesses. The second thing that you would hope for, if a good job has been done, is we're going to get some dividends out of that share. Let's say 15, 20 Rand a year. That's income growth. We as business owners get it through our salaries and through dividends. And then the third thing that asset has that we need to make sure we have if we're building our businesses into an asset is that it needs to be tradable. If there is no buyer and I cannot sell it for whatever reason, I will not enjoy that 200 Rand capital gain. Most of us get into our businesses undercapitalized. We build our businesses, we hold things together, we generate income, and we do so for 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years. And then when it comes to selling, we only realize in a period of 30 to 60 hours, that's how long it takes to sell the average business. Wow, can this business be sold? And with respect, it doesn't matter how much you love what you do. The energy you have when you are 50 is less than the energy you had when you were 30, which is less than the energy you had when you're 60 and 70. We have a couple of folks that we work with, 78 years old in the business, the only anode maker in South Africa, has earned a fantastic living for this individual, his family. He has staff that's been there for 30, 40 years. The business is completely unsellable. So what is an asset? How do we turn a business into an asset? An asset's got 5 features to it. It needs to have a brand. If the brand is called your name, if the brand is dependent on you, Chris, then it's not a brand. A brand needs to be independent of you. And we'll talk to what that means in practical terms. It then needs to be brought to life through systems, a system of delivery. Then you need the right team members to make those systems work. Before you sell, always, you need to be growing. That's if you want to get a good capital exit. And these features, these 4 features, create a sellable asset. I'm going to talk you through very quickly how you get that done. But first, I want to start with an analogy, a story. This individual, Willem, you know what? If you shaved your beard, you could look like him. Does he look happy? Because you've got to be one of the happiest people I've ever met in my life. You're consistently positive. You're consistently out there. Your level of energy and passion and excitement for life in the world is contagious. This man's equally happy, but he's happy for different reasons, Willem. You know why? This man makes $10 million a year. He's a man that I worked with in 2011, 2012, 2013 in the United States. And his name is Kevin Van Dam. And he is the world champion, largemouth bass sports fisherman. In the United States, there are 39 million registered bass fishermen. It's a big market. It's almost the size of our viable adult economy. It's a huge market. And Kevin wins every tournament. And that's why he makes $10 million a year. I'm going to tell you how he does it, because there are lessons in how he does it that are no different to what we need to do in our own businesses. The first decision Kevin took is that he would specialize in bass fish only. As a freshwater fish, that's a picture of the bass. It is a grumpy fish. It's an aggressive fish. It's an antisocial fish. It's territorial. It behaves in a very particular way. It's very different to a catfish. It's very different to a barbel. It's very different. Who's a papgoeie here? Who are the papgoeies? Let me see. Thumbs up on the screen. Gerrit, you're not a papgoeie, ne? Okay. I know that Pippa's a papgoeie. Pippa, put your thumb up. We know that you're a papgoeie. Pippa's the person who you'll find there by Hardebeespoort, sitting on her stool watching the rugby with the braai and 3 rods. Papgoeie. Pippa's a papgoeie. He specialized in bass only. That's the first thing he did. He decided that he wasn't going to try and be the world's top angler in every species of fish. The second thing he did is he invested to win. In his boat that he showed me, the way that this works, you have a big freshwater lake, you have all the competitors lining up, and what the Americans typically do, normally what we would do is we would have a cap gun or a whistle You'd blow the whistle or fire the cap gun, and all the boats would have to race off to wherever they're going to go and fish. And the rules say no other boat can be within 50 meters radius of me. That's the rule of the competition. So in America, what they do is they get an M16 automatic rifle. They shoot 3,000 bullets up into the air to signal that the competition has begun, and off go the boats. Kevin's boat has a nitrous oxide booster on it. He has the fastest boat on the circuit, so he can get to the best spot first. On his boat, when I stood there on the console, he pressed a button. Coming out of the decks were fishing tackle boxes. Kevin takes 3,000 fishing lures with him into every competition. The lure, this little plastic hoiki here, makes a big difference. They're different colors, they're different shapes, they're different sizes. They behave differently in the water. Some are designed to look like a broken, wounded fish. Others are designed to look very aggressive, threatening the territory of the bass. Kevin takes 16 rods with him into every competition. His competitors, he tells me, take between 6 and 9. His competitors, he tells me, take between 300 and 600 lures. In the winter months, when there are no competitions, what does Kevin do? Charles, he must have a wife who really loves him, really loves him. Because this poor woman climbs into the big RV. It's a groot caravan on wheels. And they drive around to all the freshwater lakes. He climbs into a cold water diving suit. And he climbs into the lakes, which are at 2, 3, 4 degrees, so he can look at what the lakes look like underneath the water. He can look to see where the rocks are in the lakes, where the broken tree stumps are, where the reeds begin and where the reeds end. And then he climbs out the lake and he marks every single lake with the top 3 or 4 best fishing spots. His competitors are at home watching television. Kevin makes $10 million a year because he wins every competition. And a lot of people turn around and say, "Ah, he's a lucky guy and he's talented." Really? So let's look at the lessons from Kevin in the way we build a business. How do you position your business? What do you do in a competitive environment? All of us have got so many competitors that we're dealing with out there. In South Africa alone, there are 1.3 million .co.za websites. 1.3 million .co.za websites. That excludes the .coms. It excludes the .orgs, the .ios, the .cos, the new versions of domains. Having a storefront is no longer good enough. And what you communicate on that storefront, the window to your customer's world, is going to be important. How they find you, where they find you, is going to be important. I want to run one more poll. And my question to you is, what makes your business special in the eyes of your customer? In the same way, when you go fishing, if you want to catch a sailfish, you use a very different lure compared to if you want to catch a freshwater largemouth bass. In many ways, the way that we fish and who we fish for has a big impact on our success in being able to reach our clients and customers and get them on board. What makes you special? Price. We've got 3% of price. Product or service features. Yeah, there's some really, really good. Etienne, Rudder Pumps looks like a really good product. It looks like it's got some great features to it. Looks like a great product. That's a very good background, by the way, for Zoom. You're advertising all the time, Manya. Well done on you. Good move. Good move. For most of us, it's home invasion. Relationships, 28%. Quality, 14%. I would expect that. I would have expected that. Other 1%. So let's share the poll. Let's have a look. Where are we? Your service, 31%, 28% on relationships, 20% on product, services, and features. So I want to share with you what's winning out there in the economy, as opposed to what we've been taught. Because what we were taught all began with this man here, Ralph Waldo Emerson, in 1771, one of the founding fathers of the United States, turned around and wrote, if you build a better mousetrap, the world will beat a path to your door. Now let me see who I can ask this question delicately. Willem, you look like you were alive then. In 1771, were there a lot of products out there?
No.
No, exactly. There's a man who knows everything. He said no, and he was right. You could get a revolver or a pistol. You could get a saddle. You could get a horse. You could get whiskey at the bar, a pair of lacquer cowboy boots, and a hat. There wasn't much else happening out there. So he was right in 1771. If you just had a product, you were winning. This man changed that. In 1922, this man turned around and said, Chris, I'm going to test your history and reading and knowledge and everything. Are you ready? Because you look like you're thinking and you look like a smart guy and you look like you read a lot. He turned around and he said, Chris is nervous, can you see? He turned around and he said, you can have any Model T Ford you want for so long as it is
a Ford.
Black. Black.
Exactly. And Dela's right, and whoever said black, you're right. Vicky, you're right. You can have any Model T Ford you want for so long as it's black. Because what did he realize? He realized that a product is a product, and more products were coming into the world. And he realized that price became a big issue. So he created the assembly line process, limiting choice on product in order to drop the cost of the vehicle. Because what was he competing against? Horses. And it was a good move, a good strategy. It built an automotive brand. But then eventually we got to a place where there were products out there. The pricing was competitive. So product advantages, pricing advantages were falling away. And this man, who is still alive today, came about and he turned around and he said, it's not only about product. It's not only about price. It's about who you are targeting. The world has become increasingly competitive. And in the early 60s, when none of us were alive, because we're all still youngsters, he turned around and he said that the way you offer your services to a market is you must decide who you serve. So if I look at most of us on the screen, we fall into the category of being SMEs. That's how we get classified. We get classified like that by the banks. We get classified like that by the mobile networks. We're this one big mass, this globular mass called SMEs. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Who's really excited by the service they get from their banks? Yeah, I can tell you this. We've had our bank, we've had the same bank for 30 years. They don't even know what we do still. They don't know what we do. But we're SMEs and we fall into their SME category. And they market to us as SMEs. When I meet with business owners and I say, who do you serve? They say corporates, blue chip corporates. Now it's funny that because the last time I looked at a blue chip corporate in mining, it behaved very differently to a blue chip corporate in retail, which behaved incredibly differently to a blue chip corporate in the automotive sector. So Philip Kotler, the father of advertising, globally well known, was right. We need to take our product with the right price and target it effectively. In the last 5, 6, 7 years, we have not seen any of these three strategies win. What we are seeing win is a business that defines its customers and defines what it does in the eyes of its customers in terms of the problem it solves for its customers. So I want to run a quick test over here. This should have been a poll. Who here will take a Myprodol if I simply give it to you? If you do not have a headache and I give you a Myprodol, will you take it? No. Lots of nodding heads. No. Anyone nodding needs to go and see an addiction counselor. Because if you don't have a headache and you want to take the Myprodol, my good friend, we need to talk after this. I know someone who can help. You take a Myprodol when you have a headache. The Myprodol solves the problem you're experiencing. In a tightening economy, in a no-growth economy, in an increasingly competitive economy, there's not one person on the screen that I'm betting will spend any money on anything that doesn't solve a problem for them. And if I go back to Philip Kotler, who says it's all about segments, and I look at how the banks serve us as SMEs, I promise you, Marie, your problems are very different to Gerrit's, which are very different to Anthony's, which are very different to Andile's, and very different to Louis'. To the extent that we understand who we serve narrowly, and we can be crisp and clear about what problem we solve, we should be able to understand the cost of the problem if it's not solved for them. In the last 7 years, we have seen companies that define what makes them special in problems win consistently. But in the last 3 years, we have not seen them winning nearly as successfully. Because the edge of competition is, yes, you need to have a good product at the right price. You need to understand who you serve in terms of a product, a problem that you solve. But the experience you give them when you solve that problem is going to count for a lot. If I solve your problem and I make it hell for you, and Corey solves the same problem and he makes it amazing for you, who are you going to go to? You'll try me once, Marie, but that's it. Afterwards, Mr. van Rensburg's going to get all my clients and customers. Understanding who we serve, what problem we solve, and what experience they want to learn about us, to get on board with us, and to be serviced by us is where the edge of competition lies, and that's where we're seeing growth in the SME economy. Your customer positioning dominance. We work with a legal firm in the United States. They were a typical legal firm where they were offering all things to all people all the time. Eventually, they decided to only focus on divorce law after a lot of convincing. They said, relationships make our business work. I said, no, solving a problem makes your business work. They decided to focus on divorce law in the family law practice. They then understood that divorces take place at 2 points in a married person's life: the 7-year itch and the midlife crisis. They understood what the issues were in the 7-year itch. They understood what the issues were in the midlife crisis. And they created marketing material that was distributed through Facebook and other social media to people who they had understood were in the 7-year period of their marriages and the midlife crisis years of their marriages. In understanding who they served, what problem they solved, and how that experience of the problem comes about, it put them in the forefront of a divorce practice in the United States. A business growing at 38.2% on a compound annual basis over 3 years, compared to a law firm previously that was growing at around 11-12% a year. The next thing you need to do, once you've understood who you serve and what experience they need, is you need to build systems. Here's a system. This system turns the propeller of your business. And if you look at the cogs that make up the systems in your business, marketing to get new clients, sales to convert those clients, operations to do what you said you would do, and all three of them working together to create a great experience. Because you know who you're serving, you know what problem they've got, and you know what experience they want. And in each of them, marketing, it's a set of activities in a sequence that can be measured and taught. Marketing it's not art, it's science. It's an engineering process of reaching the right people with the right message. If you don't know who your customers are, you can never reach those people because you don't know where to find them. If you don't know what problem you solve for them, you can never reach them because you don't know what the problem is that you're solving for them. The number of adverts I get about the features of this particular pen and why it's better than the features of the next pen are irrelevant to me. If I'm an attorney, I need a pen that looks expensive. If I'm working as a project manager in construction, I need a pen that is reliable and that is ruggedized. A pen is not a pen is not a pen. If a pen doesn't solve a problem, then it's of no value to me. It's the single biggest challenge we all face in building a business, is understanding who we serve, what problem we solve, and what experience we want. Once we've understood that, we can build a whole lot of activities into a sequence that can be measured and most importantly can be taught. Because the systems make the business happen. And once we have the systems in place, the processes, the policies, the procedures, we then need to focus on getting the right team. One of our first clients ever, 54 years old, 62 million rand a year, 14 years ago. One of the best bakers in South Africa. 5,400 bakers in South Africa, ladies and gentlemen. Very competitive space. Serving the hotel sector. The only person he sold to was the food and beverage manager. We did some interesting work with him. In every hotel group now, he sells to food and beverage. He sells to procurement. He sells to finance. And he sells to HR. Each of them have got 4 different problems from each other. Collectively, the 4 of them make the decision as to which baking product they're going to use for their continental breakfasts. That and that alone, once understood with systems behind it. See, this business closed its books in 2018 at 1.17 billion rand. It's never too late. Once we've understood our positioning, once we've understood what problem we solve, once we have built systems to make it happen, we have got to find the right people to do the right thing at the right time. Systems themselves are dead. You need people to operate the systems. And how do you find the right people ever if you don't know in clear terms what you want them to do? Getting me on board to come market your business, credit, I'll cause havoc for you. You know your customers better than I do. You understand the problem you solve. You understand the experience they need. If you build the marketing system to make that happen, and then when you employ me, you look at my CV, all 78 pages of it, and you'll think, Bliksem, this guy can build the base station on Mars for Elon Musk. Because that's what all CVs say. All CVs say, I am brilliant. I am your answer to everything. Incredibly hard to understand a CV. But if you sit down with me and you ask me about the activities that I need to run in your marketing business, you'll be able to quickly evaluate whether I'm the right person and the right fit. And if I am and I get the job and I perform, because the job is suited to me and my talent, it builds my confidence. And when it builds my confidence, I want to do more of it. And when I do more of it and I perform, I embrace the meaning and value of my contribution to the business. It gives me meaning. It excites me. It stretches me. It improves my ability and desire to stay with you. Getting the right people to do the right thing at the right time, impossible if you don't employ people to operate systems. Impossible if you don't know what makes you special in the eyes of your customer. I want to move to an end. On the chat, how long have you been in business? Let's talk about time and money. How long have you been in your business? Me, I've been in my business for 25 years. It's a long time, huh? 1 year, 4 years, 16 years from Vicky. Who else? 25 years. Charlene, 25 years. 25 years, Charles. Ronel, 25 years. Oh, we've got a 30 years from Marius. Gideon, 20 years. Elna, 30 years. 3 years, Corey. Okay, I'm watching it. Here's the reality, folks. We were told by Malcolm Gladwell, 10,000 hours doing what you do makes you an expert. 10,000 hours. 10,000 hours is 4.2 years. Here are the numbers. 30 years is 78,000 hours. 10 years is 25,000 hours. Run a quick calculation for yourself. Chris, someone in your position, an expert in what you do with way more than 10,000 hours. If I were to employ you as a consultant, what hourly rate would you expect to charge me? What is an expert consultant in the pump sector, Etienne? What would you pay me if I'm an expert consultant? I'm sitting with 78,000 hours of experience. It's a 500 Rand an hour, it's a 2,000 Rand an hour. Gerry, oh, Bliksem Gerry, I can see you trying to put an entry in, but it's coming onto the screen. No numbers. I can give you a good sense. People are charging anywhere from 1,500 to 3,500 Rand an hour as an expert consultant. Willem's nodding. It's more or less right. It's more or less right. So if you have been in the game for 15 years, 38,000 hours, times it by 2,500 Rand. That is what your life's effort should be worth. As a business owner, you take it out in salary, you take it out in dividends, and if you're selling in the 15th year, you should take it out as a capital gain. We forget to think like shareholders in our own businesses because we are so busy making the thing work. Here are the stats again. 94.6% of businesses fail to sell. And they don't fail to sell because we are dof. No, we work hard, we are smart, we are committed. It's because we are never shown how to build a business, whether it be at business school, which I've attended and I've lectured at, whether it be at Harvard or Wits or Tukkies or anywhere else. An MBA makes you a consulting technician. A CA makes you a numbers technician. A legal degree, Anthony, makes you a contracting technician. An engineer makes you think you can fix anything, anywhere, anytime, anyhow. And it's not far off. We are not shown. This is how it works. Okay, Mr. Scholz, I'm knocking on your door. I'm going to come by your business. Most businesses start on a valuation that says your profit before tax at a multiple of 2. So if your profit before tax is R1 million, the value of your business that I'm starting at is around 2 million Rand. I then say to you, Gerrit, what makes you special? And if the answer you give me is anything to do with my product, I know that there are other products out there that are equally good. If you say price, I know that Willem will compete with you next week out of necessity, because if he doesn't get his price right, he will lose his life earnings. Hard to keep a price advantage. If you say to me, I service blue chip corporates, I know that Etienne also does too. It's not special enough. If you turn around and you give me an answer and say, I service specifically large entities with 300 million Rands or more of annual revenues in the engineering industry and sector, and the problem I solve for them is an ability to remotely manage projects. And I do so through an app on a phone, making it accessible to the entire team of multidisciplinary engineers. That level of clarity lets me do a couple of things as a buyer. It lets me evaluate the size of the market, compare it to your revenues, and see how much growth remains in that market. If you give me that kind of answer, I add an extra multiple. Your 2 million rand has just become 3. The next question I ask you is, how do you make it happen? And if you can show me that there are systems that make this business happen, because remember, you're not there after I buy it. That multiple goes from a 2 to a 4. If you can show me that you've got a purposeful team with people who are committed to running those systems, doing what they do, then I know that having a good positioning with a system of delivery and a good team that will remain on takes the multiple from 2 to 5. If you're selling to me as you are growing, to show me that your history of growth is consistent and therefore I can expect it into the future once I buy the business, the multiple moves to 6. And most importantly, if you can show me that the business doesn't depend on you at all, I'm paying you 7 million rand for the same business that I was going to pay you 2 million rand for. The reverse is equally true. Every time you can't give me good answers in these 5 areas, the value of the business depreciates. My career started with me buying one 43-year-old business and thereafter a second business that was 35 years old. And I bought each of those businesses for $1 a piece. And with that, I'm a little bit over time. I'm so sorry, but I'm going to blame Dawie because he made me do some heavy lifting over here. There is a lot open for us as South Africans, a lot. We do business in the United States, in the UK and EU. I promise you, we are far tougher than any of the business owners that I work with in those areas. And although things might seem easier there, they're absolutely not. It's just a different set of challenges. South Africa remains an incredible place to make really good money. And when you make that money, put it in the hands of a person like Mr. Roodt so he can invest it sensibly for you. In South Africa, we need to build businesses that allow us to make the money to create a number of life rafts. You don't necessarily want to invest the money that you make in the place where you have your biggest asset, whether it be in the United States, whether it be in the UK, whether it be in China. Most Chinese successful entrepreneurs who are making a ton of cash invest outside of China. It's not about a belief or disbelief in the future of the country. It's about having a good crop. And I'm so sorry I took some extra time.
No, it is great. Pavlo, thank you very, very much. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, if you've got a burning question, just raise your hand and then I might pick it up on the screen and you can have a chat. Pavlo, Dawie, thank you once again. I think, you know, coming back to the whole story it's incredible. I mean, giving us the positive news, giving us the realities on the economic and the political side from Dawie's side. But, you know, as you mentioned in your closing remarks, we always tell the investors, the best investment you can ever make, the best investment you can ever make is into yourself. The second best investment you can make, what you can ever make, second best, is into your business. And if you've got spare money, then you can give that money to Dawie Roodt to invest. And the world is your oyster. You'll take it all over the world and actually get you the best returns that you can get. But that is only the third best investment that you can make. Keep that in mind. Again, just, I mean, reading your books, Pavlo, is really exciting. It gears me up, you know, and when I try to change it in Afrikaans, I had one of my translators and she said, yeah, you know, rebuild and then reignite. That's it, Dawie, look at him there, you know. Yeah, Dawie is such a clever guy, so hom net mooier kan kry. Listen, and then she said the reignite. She said, yeah, herstel, herbou en laat jou besigheid vlam vat. And I had to change that totally because we just had a big case of a restaurant burning down. So we didn't want that. That's why we don't have a reignite going to vlam vat. So this is our position here. We thought that's a good Afrikaans word. But guys, any burning questions from your side? Pavlo, closing with that last 5 critical points. You know, I'm having a big function with about 400 people tomorrow night. And I had to spread it up in 2 venues. And these 5 points are really going to be part of my speech. That I can guarantee you. I mean, really going there. And that sums it up. And let's work together. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, what we try to do is between ourselves, Efficient, Aurik, and Ontbytsake, is to partner as a, let's call it, not a tripartite alliance, but rather than a tripartite sort of a business unit, and bring the best to you and partner with you and just take hands and see if this can work. You know, if there's any questions, having Pavlo in your business and his team as your business coach, having Dawie and his team in your business as your financial coach, and having Ontbytsake maybe as your marketing coach, you know, taking it forward. This is a real success recipe that we had out there. And the 3 of us came together from Ontbytsake, Efficient, and then from our Roodt side. And if you've got a combination like this sitting in your office, boardroom, on your plaas, on your stoop, it doesn't matter. And let's just have a chat about your business and going forward and in 2021. We need you guys to survive. We need you guys to build South Africa into a new South Africa. We need you guys to change the minds of a Dawie Roodt to say there is hope in this country. Because I already know that Pavlo believes in it, I believe in it, and we need that third party. You know, between the 3 of us, they talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. We just don't know who is who. Julle kan besluit. But I don't see any hands coming up. There's 4 questions. Let me just go to the chat box. I'm not sure. Can you read it, Pippa? Is there anything serious? You know, when you get to 56, you need glasses. All right. Great session. Thank you. All the books are available. That's it. Yes, it's a great Christmas gift. The books. Give it to your Oma as well in the old age home. They need change there. You know, they can flomfat maybe there. They get it into those little blue pills as well. It's a flomfat pillikie. That also helps. Much appreciated. Thank you, guys. It don't seem we got any burning questions. Just from my side in closing, Pavlo, thank you. Thank you very, very much. You know, it's a privilege being a business partner with yourself, with your business, with your people. Pippa, thank you for making this happen. Always there in the corner, doing the hard work behind the scenes. I really appreciate it. Dawie, I see you within a couple of minutes. We got a GMB meeting. I will see you there. Thank you for being dressing so sporty this morning. You know, your little white t-shirt is always this nice, bright and colorful look, you know. Witter as sneeuw sal hy wees. Witter as sneeuw. And ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us. I know this is an hour out of your day. Actually, an hour and 15 minutes. Maar hoorie, mag julle 'n wonderlike jaar hê. Mag julle geseënde Kersgety hê. Wees lief vir jou familie. Even if you just kiss the dog, just kiss somebody today. All right. Hug them. Lots of love from our side. And let's make it happen. You know where to contact us. You know where to get hold of us. We are there. We would like to help you. Cheers, guys. Have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye, everyone. Very, very nice seeing you all again.
Bye, Pavlo.
Bye.
Bye-bye.